America, bonjour, hi, Canada. I thought you needed a little happy music since the Republicans got beat in Georgia last night. Congratulations to Senator Warnock and his reelection. Herschel, you did a good job, just not good enough. First-time candidate disease. Final score, 51 to 48. 51.4% to 48.6 or something. 3-point win. Not close, no cheating involved, just a great turnout for Warnock, a better organization. And Herschel's a first-time candidate, and not a very good one at that. And it goes into the category of first-time candidates who failed this year. That includes, of course, Kerry Lake and Blaise Masters in Arizona, Dr. Oz in Pennsylvania, Herschel Walker. Those four will be held up for a long time as well-meaning people who had enough money and enough time and a weak enough opponent that perhaps they ought to have won, or someone could have won that race, but not a first-time candidate who made first-time mistakes, and especially a first-time candidate closely aligned with Donald Trump. I think it's fair to say that if the former president had not encouraged Herschel, Herschel wouldn't have won. I thought Herschel was a very good man. I enjoyed interviewing him. I met him in person down there. Don't get between Herschel and a Georgia football fan. And I wish him well. He did a good job, but I'll bet you he wasn't prepared for this. And I'll bet you he did not realize that you asked for the left of this country or the right of this country to go after an opposite number. They will find out everything you've ever done, and they will get your son, and they'll get your son to turn against you, and they'll get your friends and family to say bad things about you, and they will find the dirt, and they'll use it, and they will throw questions at you relentlessly about anything other than, say, China. And it's not a great place to learn how to be a politician. Being a politician is a skill set, just like running a radio show. Generalissimo and I have long had a catchphrase: everybody's a producer. And everybody's a producer is shorthand for everyone thinks they can sit down and run a radio show for 3 hours, but in fact they can't. Well, it's much, much more difficult to run a statewide campaign than it is to run a radio show. But it helps to learn how to do it by learning how to be a candidate at the state and local level, or maybe a first-time congressional candidate. I've got Juan Ciscomandi, who's going to be our freshman of the year. We always have one freshman when they have an incoming class who comes on once a month to tell us how it's going. Juan Ciscomandi from Tucson is going to be our freshman of the year, and you'll hear from Juan later today. How did he get it together? How did he win in Purple District? How did Juan do it the right way and Herschel come up short? One is simply a matter of scale. First-time candidates don't have to learn as much if they're running for Congress than if they're running for Senate. If you're running for Senate in Georgia, I remember talking to Carl about Herschel, Karl Rove, saying, he's a great guy, but he's from Texas. And that was the first problem. He hadn't lived in Georgia in a long time. And the carpetbagging thing hit him and Dr. Oz. But generally also, are you fluent with the issues? Are you familiar with all the issue sets that are going to be coming up? Raphael Warnock is nothing if not eloquent. He's wrong about everything. I mean, he's pretty far left. He might be the most left-leaning member of the Senate now that Bernie Sanders has lost his wingman, Pat Leahy. And Bernie Sanders isn't quite really a Democrat, though. He runs for the Democratic presidential nomination. I've never understood that. Independent, but caucuses with the Democrats. Bernie's a socialist. Raphael Warnock is a socialist. And he's going to be there for 6 years with John Ossoff. So you have the most left-leaning and the least consequential members of the Senate representing one of the most important states. I think this is, by the way, prefiguring Ohio State's victory over the Bulldogs on New Year's Eve. It's going to be a rough month for Georgia Republicans. They're going to lose the regular election, they're going to lose the runoff, and then they're going to lose the national championship semifinal game against the Buckeyes. But congratulations, Pastor Warnock. See you around D.C. You're always welcome here on the Hugh Hewitt Show. Let me do the other news. Yesterday, a coalition of senators led by Tom Tillis on the Republican side, who's a friend of mine. I like Tom Tillis a lot. You know, Tom Tillis is one of the handful of Republican senators and congressmen who worked around the clock to get men and women out of Afghanistan a year and 3 months ago when it collapsed. And for that, I will always be grateful. And he won a tough race. And I do not know why he is involved in this, but they've rolled out an immigration reform plan that has not been vetted with anybody. They're doing the same thing they did in 2006 and 2013. A group of Republicans in the Senate decide that they will put together a group of 4, a group of 6, a group of 8, a group of 10, and they will tell us what to do on immigration. And once again, it's going to fail. And it's going to fail because it doesn't have the wall. I have not changed my position on this from 2004, and I don't think any American has changed their position on this. We want a double-sided very large fence or a wall, like Donald Trump's wall, along every part of the southern border that can be walked over. And that is the first precondition of an immigration reform deal. That's it. Now, the 11 million or 20 million, somewhere in between there, people in the country without permission, illegal immigrants, you can call them whatever you want. They're not here legally. They came across the border illegally. And, oh, wait, they claimed amnesty. Yeah. Well, everyone says they're innocent as well. But they didn't get permission to enter, and they've come across at a border, or they've come across, and lots of them die along the way. It's a horrible situation. That will not change until the border has a physical barrier on it, supplemented by a great deal of additional security and a very robust border patrol. And this begins by talking about the Dreamers. And there isn't anybody I know who wants the Dreamers out. But they do all want an immigration reform package that accomplishes a few things. Regularization is fine. Pathway to citizenship is not. It depends on what's in the pathway. So you throw that at me. I said that doesn't mean anything. Tell me what you're talking about. Regularization means you can stay and work, and we're not going to throw you out if you don't get in trouble with the law. And your children who you brought over, your minor children, they get to stay and work, and we're not going to throw them out, and they get to go to college, and they get to become residents of the state and qualify for in-state tuition. You all get driver's license, but we're not going to declare you citizens, and I don't know what the conditions for declaring citizenship is. That's a negotiated issue. But nothing's going to happen until they build a wall. And so Senator Tillis and the rest of you, it's disastrous, again. And you ought to go back and talk to John Cornyn and John Kyle. Because these are two very smart guys. John Cornyn and John Kyle, two of my favorite senators in the 23 years I've been doing this. And they always will tell you they really didn't know what was going to happen when they tried 2006 and 2013. But now it's 10 years later, and it's going to lose again. It's going to blow up again. I just don't know why Republicans don't go out and talk to people and tell the Democrats, first thing we do is build the wall. And when the wall is done, we will do regularization. And let's talk about the specifics of that because we want to be generous-hearted. We're Americans. That will work, but not this. The Trump organization was found guilty of criminal tax fraud in New York trial. Okay, what this means? Nothing. It's on every newspaper. The Trump organization gave benefits to employees that they helped the employees make sure were not taxable. So things like, let's pay for your kid's college, but we're not going to pay you salary to pay your kid's college. We're just going to give your kid a scholarship, something like that. That's a taxable benefit, especially when it's coming from a corporation. And when it's coming from a corporation, they've got to do it. So they're going to face some penalty. It does not involve Donald Trump or his family members. They are not under indictment. They were not on trial. And no, if you read a story that doesn't lead with that, it's a bad story. And I've got the Wall Street Journal story. It leads with, former President Trump's family business was convicted Tuesday of criminal tax fraud. All right, so okay, get the president in the first graph. Second graph. The jury found two Trump Organization corporate entities guilty of all criminal counts they faced, including conspiracy, criminal tax fraud, and falsifying business records. The two entities could face a total of $1.6 million in fines. Really? That's it? $1.6 million in fines to the Trump Organization? They might have to sell, like, the lower 40 at Bedminster, whatever they call that. And then the guilty verdict is a blow to Mr. Trump. I actually don't think so. I don't think it matters a bit to Mr. Trump. It might, in fact, strengthen Donald Trump and his long litany of grievances against the prosecutorial ambitions of so many people across so many states in the federal government. But it's leading every newspaper, so I thought I would tell you about it. Allies of Kevin McCarthy implore GOP holdouts to back him for Speaker. Now, this is something worthy of your time and attention. Call up your Republican congressperson and say, would you please get Kevin McCarthy into the Speaker's chair immediately? And we're going to slap around forever everyone who opposes him. They're banished from this show. You'll never hear a good word. Now, they might be posturing right now, and I don't know who's going to vote against him in round one. But if they screw this up, they're costing momentum. They're costing us time. Kevin McCarthy is going to be the Speaker. He's going to be a very good Speaker. He's a great leader. In California, he's a great minority leader. He's going to be a great speaker. And people are screwing with him. There are 222 Republicans, and a handful of them, between 2 and 8, are screwing around with him. And those 2 and 8 people should be exiled. If they end up screwing this up, they should just be exiled from our rolls. And I mean, from the rules of conservative media, they should not be on Fox. They should not be on the Hugh Hewitt Show. They should not get your money. They should never get your time, attention, or favorable, because they are screwing up the transition of power. We are actually better off than we were at the start of 2020, even though we have lost the Senate 51-49 and we had hoped to take it. That's disappointing. But having the House matters, provided the House works like a conservative Republican House ought to work. That's what I'll talk about after the break. Don't go anywhere, America. It's Christmas time. Shake it off, Georgia. Good work, Herschel. You tried. You didn't get across the goal line. Maybe in the future. We'll be right back on the Hugh Hewitt Show. America, bonjour, hi, Canada. I'm Hugh Hewitt, live inside the Beltway, joined by my friend from West Virginia, the Attorney General of that great state, the Mountaineer State, Pat Morrissey. Good, welcome back, General. It's good to have you on the Hugh Hewitt Show again.
It's good to be with you. It's been a wild stretch, but I'm grateful to be back on your program.
Well, good to talk to you. Now, General, before we get to some serious law and bore people to death, but you and I are lawyers, we like to talk law. People are looking at Joe Manchin and saying he's either going to get retired or he's going to get retired. And you are one of the people that they think might try and retire him. Is that true?
It is true. As you may recall, in a really, really tough year, 2018, I lost one of the closest U.S. Senate races in the country to Joe Manchin by 3 points. And they threw mountains of money in against us. I am looking very seriously at that race for 2024. I think if you look at the records, it's very clear we have the best record for the state of West Virginia. Not only have we been out in front taking on the swamp, leading the way to win one of the biggest separation of powers cases in 20 years, West Virginia VPA. We were out in front on education issues, winning one of the broadest school choice laws in the country this year. We've been a leader fighting fentanyl and what's going on at the border. And we've actually realized the largest per capita opioid settlements in the nation. We're ready to go. We have a record that fits the people of our state. And I think Joe Manchin, with his vote in the Inflation Reduction Act, has so deeply disappointed so many West Virginians that they're ready for a change.
Yeah, I don't know that he's actually going to run. I just, unless he switches party. Have you considered what you'll do if he switches parties?
Yeah, I don't think that he'll do that. I think he's a traditional Democrat and that he's had that opportunity in the past. And so I just don't see that happening. But look, my focus over the last 6 years, when you run in a race like that, you learn lessons. And I think we buckled back down in the AG's office. We've done some pretty incredible things. We've talked about some of them on the radio. And I think that people are going to see the difference is someone that works and advances West Virginia's interest and also who has been on the front lines taking on and defeating the Biden agenda. And certainly if Joe Manchin runs, he won't be able to do that. And quite frankly, we're better positioned than any other person who would run. Now, to be clear, Hugh, I'm seriously considering this. A lot of people are pushing me to run for governor of our state as well. So I'm deliberating it. We have time. We're going to do this the right way. And I'm still excited to continue to fight against the Biden administration. That's a constant effort, a part of our office every day.
I'm going to come back to West Virginia versus EPA in a second, the opioid settlement. But I want to stress one thing. I'd open the show by saying congratulations, Reverend Senator Warnock, on being reelected, and to say to Herschel, well done, good try. But like Carrie Lake, like Blake Masters, like Dr. Oz, the first time you run for the office should not be for the Senate of the United States. It's too hard. You ran successfully for Attorney General twice now. You ran unsuccessfully for Senate. So this would be your fourth statewide race. What will you know at the starting line now, if you do this, that you didn't know when you ran against Joe Manchin the first time, or even when you ran for AG the first time?
I think one of the biggest things that you learn is that when you're running for U.S. Senate or you're running for a governor, the voters need to know what your vision is. They need to know you at a much deeper level. When you're running for AG, I think that voters know you. They make a judgment on you. But it's much deeper when you're running for these other offices. And so over the last few years, I've been focusing on refining the record and ensuring that if I do run for a higher office in the future, they're going to know there's no more qualified person to serve either in the U.S. Senate or governor coming out of this AG position because we've been able to get so much done. Hugh, also from a practical perspective, you learn when you have a race like that. Last time they had about $34 million pumped into West Virginia compared to the 18 total on our side. And as you may recall, a lot of that was spent in a primary. We're already way ahead in terms of building our infrastructure and resources, 4 times the resources of the guy that got in just recently. And I think that we're in a position where we can articulate our message and people will hear it. We won't be off the air for 3 months. That was a killer back in 18, where for 3 months, the other side, Schumer and Manchin, just were able to run ads and we weren't able to respond. That won't happen in the future, and we'll be ready for all comers.
You know, General, I'm laughing to myself because I began the show saying the same thing. I'm a much better radio host than I was in 1990 when I began because I've been doing it forever, for 33 years, right? And so there are things...
You have to learn from experience, right?
Yes.
You make mistakes, you get better, and if you dwell on that, you have I always say self-awareness is an underrated characteristic in politics. Well, you know, we have a little bit of self-awareness. You learn what you did right. You learn what you made mistakes in. You get better and you go win.
Yeah, now let's move to West Virginia versus EPA, because I wanted to thank you personally. People have no idea. I wrote a Washington Post column about this 6 months ago. This is the most important freedom case in the last 3. I think Dobbs was big. Dobbs was huge for saving life. But for saving freedom of people who are already alive, West Virginia versus EPA is it. Would you explain to people what that was about and how you succeeded? God bless you for it.
This is probably one of the biggest cases we've seen in our lifetime. And here's why, you. At the end of the day, a lot of people talked about the fact that, Morrissey went after the Biden climate agenda and we halted it on the regulatory side and some of the mandates they were trying to put in place. But what this case was really about at its essence was, in our country, you have a question: who gets to decide the major questions of the day? Should it be unelected bureaucrats, or should it be the people's representatives in Congress? And I think that the court was very clear that when you have matters of vast economic and political significance, it's, of course, critical for the Congress to make the decisions as to how it's going to proceed and not leave this to the unelected bureaucrats who reach down into their bag of tricks, pull out twisted, ambiguous phrase and say, we're going to reorder the nation's power grid, or we're going to put broad new vaccine mandates in place at OSHA and in other federal agencies, the CDC evictions. I think that this has the opportunity to be a game changer because it took on the swamp in a way that no one has in a long time. And it said, no, you're not going to get the deference that we're used to giving you under the law, going back to the Chevron deference from 1984. You're not going to get that anymore because we're going to ensure that the core of the Constitution takes precedence. There will be no constitutional shortcuts for the bureaucrats anymore. And by removing that deference, that makes a big difference for freedom and it forced people to go through the right process.
You know, people don't know this, but at the end of Gladiator, when Russell Crowe gets gut stabbed by the Roman emperor, nobody sees it, right? They don't, but he's going to bleed out, and he does bleed out. The administrative state is going to bleed out because of the lawsuit you brought, West Virginia versus EPA. Now, people don't know that's going to take 10 years, but this court, if it stays a 6-3 court or gets better under the next Republican president, it's going to bleed out the administrative state. So thank you.
And you know what? The other point I would make is that when we were going through the process, a lot of people criticized us. We went 0-4 at the D.C. Circuit. 0-4. We went 2-0 at the U.S. Supreme Court. It took me 9 years leading this coalition. The reason why I mention that is that now the case law begins to populate through the Court of Appeals, through the district courts, and when you get a new administration, you could take this major questions doctrine and the reduction of power of the bureaucracy, you can embed it in agency rules, and the next president has a chance to really, truly go after the swamp using the weapon of West Virginia v. EPA, which, by the way, is a value-neutral decision that doesn't favor Republicans or Democrats because it adheres to the rule of law.
General, can I put you on hold and hold you over for one extra segment this morning?
Absolutely.
Because I want to talk about the opioid crisis and what you're going to do with the settlement. But I got to do it. Welcome back, America. It's Hugh Hewitt. The day after Herschel Walker loses in Georgia, I am talking with Attorney General Pat Morrissey of West Virginia. He might be running against Joe Manchin. He's done so before. It came very close, but not enough. And he's learned. And by the way, General, what is your political website? I don't want your AG website. I want your political website if people want to follow what your political choices are.
Sure. So right now we have a website called Team Morrissey. So that's Team and then MORRISEY, not the singer. So if you can tell,
and not Ed Morrissey either. Not Hot Air is Ed Morrissey. Hot Air is edited by our friend Ed Morrissey, my frequent guest.
Exactly. No, he spells it wrong. As
he does.
Saying, but
yeah, and I want him to interview you so it can be Morrissey on Morrissey here on the Hugh Hewitt Show in the future. But let's get to the opioid settlement. General, I saw the tobacco settlement in California get wasted, thrown away. Billions of dollars on TV ads, wasted, just throwing water into the ocean. So I don't know how much money you got from the opioid defendants. What are you going to spend it on, and how are you going to make sure it's effective?
What a great question. And in fact, that's been driving me from the very beginning. It doesn't matter how much money you get in if the money's going to go down the government black hole. And that's what actually we've been working on preventing. So West Virginia has actually created kind of a first-of-its-kind structure. All the states, of course, to obtain national settlement money have been bringing in their counties, their municipalities, creating structures to make it work. And in fact, many across the country are creating broad new government structures. And I'm a little weary of creating a lot of new government for this. Here's what West Virginia is doing a little bit different. Number one, we're actually dividing the money up. There's going to be a portion that goes to the counties and cities, about 24.5%. And the counties and cities had really insisted on that. But that's going to go to a lot of the immediate needs that they're addressing right now with opioids. Obviously, West Virginia's been hit as hard or harder than any state in the nation. And now with the fentanyl crisis, it's even doubly so because of the illicit product coming across the border. But beyond that, there's going to be money that's set aside with a foundation. And that's actually not going to be run through the traditional political terms. So the money's not going to get wasted. There will be broad oversight through my office and the Attorney General's office to make sure resources are spent right. But we're going to have the best private sector leaders. It's a public-private partnership.
Amen.
In the country.
Amen. General, I'm getting ahead of myself there. I served 17 years on the Orange County, California Children and Families Commission, which was funded by the tobacco tax. And the first thing we did is we didn't spend any money for 3 years. We built a foundation so that we could maintain the services that we eventually stood up. Totally voluntary. We were paid $100 a meeting. I lost money on every meeting I went to. And the reason we insisted on that, we didn't want anyone making money from this thing. You have to have some staff, of course. How much money is going to go into the foundation?
Yes, so this is great. So 72.5% of the overall settlement amount will go in. And right now, quite frankly, we're negotiating because I want to make sure that the attorney's fee amount is reasonable and that it's not just this outrageous number. And so that's still going to be decided by the courts. But the beautiful thing about this, Hugh, is number one, needs assessment. I'm insisting on that because you look across the 55 counties, money flows on the basis of needs. Second, all the money doesn't get dumped in right away. It's actually over a prolonged period of time. It's invested, so the money's got to be managed very carefully by a lot of professionals from representatives across our state. I'm excited about it. It's going to be different and better than any of the other models in the country. I spent 6 months negotiating this with folks all across our state. It's a good agreement. I'm excited about it. Hugh, right now, we're probably looking at an aggregate of about $1 billion overall.
All right, so, General, one piece of advice for you. There's a firm out in San Francisco called Bainbridge. They broke off from Bain Consulting. After about 6 years of spending money, 8 years, we brought them in, and they did a Bain Consulting kind of review of where we were spending the money. And they said, this is good, this is bad. They're great, and they are not invested. They don't make money by making money. They're not-for-profit sector. Don't waste it. God bless you, don't waste it, because the opioid crisis is going to be around for 100 years.
Amen.
And that foundation is going to be, you'll figure it out as you go along.
Right. That's the godsend that's going to help save a lot of lives.
TeamMorrissey.com or TeamMorrissey.org, General?
TeamMorrissey.com. Go online, learn more about us. We're coming, and be on the lookout in the next few months.
We're going to talk more about the opioid crisis down the road. Well done, General Morrissey. Stay tuned, America. I'm Hugh Hewitt. A little bit of Rod Stewart to make Congressman Gallagher's troubles fade. Now, the good news is the Green Bay Packers did beat the Chicago Bears last weekend. The bad news is they beat the Chicago Bears last week. And Congressman Mike Gallagher, welcome. I guess a win is a win is a win. But when you beat the Bears, is it really a win?
Well, it is when in beating the Bears, you become the winningest football team in football history. So that was a massive, massive victory for the Green Bay Packers. We still have a 4% chance of making the playoffs. So hope springs eternal. Entitled.
I love that, Congressman. I love that. Wait until last millennium. I love that stuff. Just you wait until last millennium. We'll be really good again. So I also want to point out the Browns are slightly better than the Bears, and the what's the name of that basketball team you have? What do we call them up there? The Bucks.
Milwaukee Bucks. The Bucks.
Yeah, the Bucks are slightly better than the Cavaliers. The Cavaliers beat the Lakers last night. Congressman Gallagher, what is this select committee on China going to be like? How many people are going to be on it? What's it going to do? Why bother? I mean, I'm arguing in favor of it, but maybe you should.
I think it'll have roughly 9 or 10 Republicans and let's say 7 or 8 Democrats. So I do think the speaker, soon-to-be speaker, Kevin McCarthy, sincerely wants this to be a bipartisan exercise because he believes that given the importance of the issue, we need Republicans and Democrats to be working together in order to push back against Chinese Communist Party aggression. I can imagine 3 lines of effort for the Select Committee. One is ensuring all of the current committees are working together to surge hard power west of the international date line in general and provide enhanced support to Taiwan in particular. There's a lot of language in the NDAA that we're going to pass today with that in mind, but there's still a lot we need to do in terms of pressing the executive branch and the Pentagon in particular to move faster. The second line of effort I would call economic statecraft. We need to identify those industries or areas where we're just too dependent on China and figure out a way to reduce our dependency, as well as figure out a way to cut off the flow of U.S. dollars that's funding China's military modernization and genocide. And then I think the final line of effort is what I would call ideological competition or human rights, finding a way to expose the atrocities of the CCP and contrast the totalitarian system that the CCP is implementing with the American system of self-government and American leadership of the free world. And in that, I would also put the way in which the Chinese Communist Party is trying to corrupt a lot of our domestic institutions. So a lot of areas where the Select Committee can have a massive impact. But overall, I think it involves telling a compelling story to the American people about why this matters, why they should care about the threat posed by the Chinese Communist Party.
Now, Congressman, I got a couple of things to cover with you, but first, a recommendation unsolicited from me. Jake Sherman asserted quite certainly that you are going to be the chairman of this on Monday's show. I'm not going to ask you about that because you can't tell me if you're going to be the chairman. That's up to soon-to-be Speaker McCarthy. But if you are and you have any input, I hope you put at least one freshman on that committee, and I hope his name is Juan Ciscomani. And the reason is we need a Spanish-speaking member of that committee to speak on Spanish-language media about the Chinese Communist Party. And I mean, really, to take the message, and having a freshman makes it big, and I don't know how many Spanish-speaking members we have on the Republican side, but I mean someone fluent who can go on Spanish-language media and say, look out, these are bad. Now, the second thing I want to recommend to your attention is Governor Larry Hogan yesterday announced an emergency directive to prohibit the use of TikTok, China, and Russia-based products and platforms in state government. This is big news. He's got it. He's figured out. TikTok should be out of this country. And Larry Hogan gets it. Does the committee that you see standing up get it?
Absolutely. I have a bill, and Senator Rubio has a companion bill in the Senate that would effectively ban TikTok. Ours is going to be a bipartisan bill in the House of Representatives. I sent a letter to my governor, Democratic Governor Tony Evers, 2 days ago with the entire Wisconsin delegation, urging him to do what South Dakota and now Maryland have done, which is lead by example and prohibit the use of TikTok. And I think Americans need to understand, not only is this highly addictive, is it highly corrosive for our kids' cognitive development, you're handing the Chinese Communist Party a massive bit of leverage over all of us in the future. You're giving them the ability to track your location. You're giving them the ability to collect information on what websites you're visiting, even when you're not using the app, all of your keystroke information. That's simply unacceptable. And the fact that we have multiple former members of Congress that are lobbying on behalf of TikTok, effectively lobbying for ByteDance, which means you're effectively lobbying for the Chinese Communist Party, is disgusting. It's not worth it. I know they pay a lot of money. They spent $7 million last year on lobbying alone, nearly $7 million, but it's not worth it.
Will the committee have subpoena power, Congressman? Will the committee have subpoena power?
The rules are still in development, but I believe it will. I believe, though, it also will have the ability to, if the committee makes a recommendation, the committee of jurisdiction that already exists will have to take up that bill that the select committee recommends be considered. So there is a way in which it can productively move legislation or ensure that legislation doesn't fall through the cracks of various committees who have overlapping jurisdiction, who might not otherwise be interested in doing something related to China.
The reason I asked about subpoena power is I want you to subpoena, and I'll be not, if you're the chair or you're a member, I'm going to be banging on you every week. I want every one of those lobbyists subpoenaed to appear in front of the committee so the American public can see who is selling them the rope. Because that is exactly what they are doing. And it's not just TikTok users, it's kids using TikToks. They're building portfolios, dossiers on these children. And people think I'm an Orwellian nut. I'm not. I just know the CCP. Am I crazy? They're going to file this stuff away with their AI capacity and use it for as long as those people are alive.
One other thing to consider, Hugh, an increasing amount of young Americans get news from TikTok. So
yes,
with the CCP-controlled algorithm, they could censor the news in a way that's more friendly to CCP narratives, or let's say suppresses information about the protests in China. There's all sorts of ways where they can sort of edit the reality that young Americans are consuming. I would commend the work of Klon Kitchen at the American Enterprise Institute, who's been talking about this a lot, and I think really giving a detailed analysis about why this is a threat. So my hope is that we'll be able to move this legislation in a Republican-controlled House. Again, it will be bipartisan. And if nothing else, the Select Committee on China could shine a light on this. And one other thing, Hugh, this is kind of bound up in a bigger discussion about how we regulate the cross-border flow of data. There's no real coherent arrangement for that right now. We don't have a reciprocal arrangement with China when it comes to how we govern cross-border data flows. There's something called the ICTS process. It's very new. It's very underdeveloped. This is an area that Congress needs to focus on when we do oversight over the next 2 years. It's the Wild West out there right now. We need to make sure that China is no longer eating our lunch in the data space.
Okay, so please remember the subpoenas. Please remember our Spanish-speaking friends. And then I want to read this to you from Ellis Items. Do you read Ellis Items every morning? He covers China like nobody else does, John Ellis. There's a story today. Yeah, it's a Substack. Several Chinese graduate students have invented a plain-looking, low-cost coat that can hide the human body day or night from security cameras monitored by AI, according to the team. The Invisa Defense Coat can be seen by human eyes, but is covered in a pattern that blinds cameras in the day and sends out unusual heat signals at night, according to the team. Now, that's from the South Morning China Post, and it's in Ellis Items. That's because the surveillance of the Chinese state is ubiquitous in China, and it's going to be ubiquitous in the United States if we don't get TikTok out of here. So I want this select committee, maybe the most important thing McCarthy does in his 2 years as Speaker, what maybe 20 years as Speaker, is to get the hearings going and get the American people informed. And I hope that, will it be Hakeem Jeffries who appoints the members of it, not Nancy Pelosi?
Yes, it will be. So
if you shake your head on radio, Congressman, if you shake your head on radio, people can't see that actually on radio.
I assumed everyone was watching this video that's being recorded. Why did
the
I
Salem
wear a
News? It's called multi-platform. I'm not sure you're the guy to run the China committee if you don't realize that there are kind of double platforms going here.
This is why I need your media tutelage here.
Hey, by shaking his head, he confused the TikTok people.
Right. I have my sort of the Harry Potter cloak of invisibility that you just mentioned, Hugh.
That was CCP subterfuge.
That's right.
Who are we got 1 minute left? Who are the Democrats that you would like to see Hakeem Jeffries put on this? Because they've got to be. I hope one of them Spanish speaking, like at least one member of the Republicans. But who do you have in mind?
Alyssa Slotkin would be great. She has an incredible national security background. Abigail Spanberger, Mikey Sherrill, Jimmy Panetta, who I work with on the Armed Services Committee. There's a lot of Democrats like that with national security backgrounds who are more serious, more sober, who are willing to work together. Heck, even Ro Khanna, when it comes to China.
Ro's very smart.
Yeah, very smart.
He's very smart.
I think you get a solid group of 7 serious Democrats like that and make this a very serious effort.
And the staffing will be done by when?
My hope is to have, if I'm so lucky as to be appointed to this, my goal would be to have it up and running by January. I know it's going to take some time, but I really don't think you can waste that first quarter. No. You really got to be ready to roll. So we look forward to having the Hugh Hewitt media offsite retreat so you can school us in the ways of the force and explain the difference between radio and audio and video. That would be helpful.
And this newfangled stuff called Twitter. We're going to talk to you about that and how to use that.
What?
And we're going to talk to you about the NFL. Congressman Mike Gallagher, soon to be, I think, Chairman Mike Gallagher. Thank you, my friend. Always a pleasure to see you, even when you bring a Bears victory and say that counts. That really doesn't.
I'm waving goodbye to the people that can't see me.
Morning glory, America. Bonjour. Hi, candidate Hugh Hewitt. And although we lost in Georgia last night, I am so pleased to welcome our freshman representative of the year. Juan Ciscomani is joining the ranks of the United States House of Representatives come January, and he is joining us today. Good morning, Juan, and congratulations on your big win down in Arizona. It's great to have you back.
Thank you, Hugh. Thank you so much for the kind words, and I'm happy to be on, and also happy to be a member-elect, ready to go to work.
I'm going to walk through. I want people to understand what happens when you get elected to Congress, and that's why I wanted to do that. But during the year, we'll check in frequently, I hope monthly, with Juan, because it's always different for freshmen than from everyone else. And first of all, you got to learn how to get places in the Hill. You got to hire staff. You got to do all this different stuff. What has been your experience, sort of, since you won, Juan? It was close. You pulled it out, but it was close.
It was close, and it took almost 6 days after the election for the race to be called, and so that was unique and that was interesting. I always heard that everybody has a different path on getting there. Mine was one that I won by 1.5 points, but we won in what turned out actually to be a difficult cycle. So we're proud of having won and proud of the result, proud of the work that the team did. I'm very grateful for all the support that we got across the country, and definitely here in the district in City 6. For your listeners, this is in southeastern Arizona. This is the Tucson area and Pima County and 4 other counties. So it's a border district, a lot of trade and commerce with Mexico as well as border security, and of course the economy were the top issues. So coming in and going to orientation is quite the experience. You named a few of the things that are pretty basic. It's a lot of administrative training of how to run an office, hire, get around the Capitol. There isn't a lot of training on that. You got to look that map up yourself and get lost a few times in order for you to be able to find your way. But it's been a lot of fun, meeting a lot of members.
Now, Juan Ciscomani, Representative-elect Ciscomani, I have met your wife, and I have not met your 6 wonderful children, 6 wonderful children. Are they coming to D.C. with you, or are you going to just go back and forth direct to Tucson every weekend?
I'm going to come back. I'm going to come back home every week. I'm here now. I was in D.C. earlier this week. I just got home last night, and this is going to be the lifestyle with 6 kids. They're pretty well set in their school and grandparents and friends, and I'm going to be taking a lot of red eyes back and forth, but they're staying here at home.
I applaud that decision. I read Mike Pence's memoir recently, and they moved their children to D.C., and it's an interesting choice. But I think keeping kids where they are, especially, I think you've got some junior high kids here looking at the age of these kids. It's best just to stay put. Juan, tell me a little bit about how the family reacted to election night. I mean, were they just strung out on tension?
Yeah, we all were. Yes, we all were. As you mentioned, some of my kids are in junior high. Oldest is 14, and the youngest is 3, 6 altogether. So about 4 of them there really understood what was going on. The other ones thought it was just a fun party. I mean, our election night party included jumping castles, and it included a lot of kids' activities. It was what we call in our Hispanic community a piñata almost. Where kids were having a ton of fun. They were running around, and that's what we wanted. We wanted to have a family celebration. We knew that we weren't going to get final results that night. It was pretty clear from the beginning of how things were going to turn out, and they're going to be extended. So we knew that it had to be a celebration of the conclusion of the campaign. Regardless, we were very optimistic, and I got to tell you, that night the results weren't what we were hoping for. We were behind on the early ballot returns, and we went up and gave a speech of letting people know that the race wasn't over and thanking them for being there. So it was a nice night that we could have a conclusion to that. And then by the next morning, we went from being significantly behind to being ahead, and then we never lost the lead after that for 6 days after it was finally called.
It just takes forever these days. I want people to know Juan's website is juansiscomani.com. I hope you keep it running. I'm sure you have campaign debt that you have to pay off. Am I right about that? Do you have any campaign debt?
We ran without campaign debt all the way up to election day, and then because of the extension of the race, we accumulated some attorney services for those 6 days that the counting was going on and it was getting extended. So we ended up with a little bit there to pay off. So any help that I can get, I would really appreciate it. juansiscomani.com.
And they're going to come after you in 2 years. You know that, right? They're going to come after you.
Sure.
So yeah, start raising money now.
Yeah, they already came up with their power pack came up with the list, and we're lucky number 2 on that list. So
number 2.
Yeah, it might have been alphabetical. I don't know. All I saw is my name is number 2, and I said, okay, we're ready for another big fight. And we're gonna do good work, and we're gonna focus on results here for our district. And this has always been a swing district, a battleground district, one that has been won by razor thin margins. So it's not surprising. And I knew what we were doing when we signed up, and we're ready to go.
So once this comes out, which committees do you want? Which committees do you think you'll get?
Well, those are great questions, because right now everything's being delayed a little bit. We thought maybe by December we would know, and our deadline to request committees or our interest in committees it's this Friday. So we're gonna turn them in regardless if we find out in December or in January.
Well, I hope you end up on appropriations with my friend Ken Calvert, because it's always very powerful, but it's hard to get on.
It's hard to get on. It's a powerful committee. It's a committee that has been represented by members in this district before. One of them being the late Jim Colby that passed away just a few days ago, and it's sad news that he's gone. But he was a member here in this district for 22 years and served well in appropriations. So that will be a great legacy to continue. But I got to tell you, I'm going to work hard in any committee that I'm on. And transportation is a key issue here. Trade, obviously Homeland Security. These are all issues that we can find a way to get back to our district for sure and deliver results in whatever committee we're on.
Representative Siscomani, I may have done you dirty this morning. I volunteered you for the Select Committee on China with Mike Gallagher, who may or may not be the chair. We don't know. Because I think that committee, so important, going to be so important, needs some Spanish-speaking members to be able to go onto Spanish media and tell them about the CCP. Now, you may just think that's not at all what you want to do. I'm sorry, I volunteered you for that, but I think we need our Spanish-speaking Republicans to get out there in Spanish media on every issue. What do you think of that?
Oh, I agree. I do think, first of all, I agree that the CCP and this whole deal with China is a top risk for us, and we need all the attention that we can get on that. That is clearly one of the top targets in terms of tackling issues that are threats to us in more than one way, economically and in national security as well. So I agree with you on the importance of that. And absolutely, I was just talking to Myra Flores yesterday. We were at a reception together and talking about the importance of delivering the message in Spanish. And by doing so, you have several wins by that. Obviously, you demonstrate that our party is diverse. And for the first time, honestly, on either side of the aisle, you would have someone delivering the same message, not a message that you're trying to make it for Hispanic, for the Hispanic community, because I was asked several times to the campaign, what are the Hispanic issues? And I tell them, they're the same issues that are for you, for anyone else. And delivering that message in Spanish, I think everywhere we go is very important, and I commit to do that.
So, Juan Ciscomani, last question for you today. Congratulations again. We'll talk to you after your committee assignments. When you get to town, figure it out. But in terms of people who will consider running for Congress, what did you learn by the end that you didn't know at the beginning that anyone thinking about it should know?
Well, I can write a book on that, but I'll tell you this. Everything that I was excited about and that I knew was going to be good, it was much better than I thought. And everything that I knew was going to be a challenge was way harder than I thought. So it is, whatever you think it is more of that, both the good and the challenges as well. But my God, it's worth it. When Kevin McCarthy, we got there and he said, listen, there have been about 11,500 people in the history of the country elected to be members of Congress. That tells you you're part of a very elite and very honored group that we go to work for the people of our communities. It's a huge honor. So whatever sacrifices you have to do at the end, it's worth it.
You know, you've got such a great support group in Arizona, and Leader McCarthy is a huge Juan Ciscomani fan, that you'll be around politics for a long time, but the Democrats have to get rid of you, Juan. You're like an existential threat to them. So,
well, they'll be able to.
Yeah, check your 6 with Eli Crane and all that stuff, but just generally tell your wife thank you. She gets a lot of burdens out of this deal. I mean, when you go back and forth, she gets a lot of burdens, and I met her, and I know she's wonderful. But thank her for me, and thank your children as well. I think you're going to be very important to the future of the United States, and I greatly appreciate the sacrifice you're going to. Nobody likes that airplane. How do you get to Tucson, by the way? Do you leave from Nashville or Dulles?
It's Dallas. You go Tucson, Dallas. Sometimes I fly because I need to fly direct overnight in the red eye. I go to Phoenix, so I got to drive a couple hours, take the red eye, and then same back home. So
man,
we haven't found there's no easy way to do that. Not from Tucson. Sometimes 3-hour difference, and you have to drive 2 hours for the flight.
Make sure you join the best airport clubs, because you're going to be sitting around during Dallas delays in the middle of Dallas at the air. I think it's American down there. Juan Ciscomani, thank you and congratulations. Keep coming back. Don't go anywhere, America. I'll be right back.